الصلاة محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرج. So inshallah we'll begin our Amaal with Ziyaratul Arbaeen. And so this is a ziyarah that is narrated in some of our earlier books of dua and earlier books of hadith. Who has narrated this? Shaykh al-Tusi has narrated this in his book Tahdhib and Misbahul Mutahajjid. The reason why I mentioned that is because not all of the ziyarat that we read from the Ahlul Bayt are necessarily narrated in earlier sources. And this makes a big difference because a lot of times people will look at these ziyarat and use them as theological basis in terms of their understanding of the Ahlul Bayt. This ziyarah, of course, has been narrated in earlier sources. That is why this is significant. And the story behind it is that Safwan al-Jammal, he says, he was a companion of the sixth Imam. He says, when I was with the sixth Imam told me that when you go to visit the shrine, or the grave rather, of the third Imam on the day of Arbaeen, these are the lines that you are to recite. So this is from the teaching of the sixth Imam that has now come to be known within our communities as Ziyaratul Arbaeen. Inshallah, we'll begin with the ziyarah. Afterwards, we'll also do Ziyaratul Warith, which is a ziyarah that is recited for our beloved third Imam, which also has mentioned in earlier books of narrations. Afterwards, inshallah, we'll have some time before Maghrib to do the 2 rakat Salat for the ziyarah. And these moments we're going through, it's also recommended around Maghrib and around Ghurub to do 40 times La ilaha illallah on this day as well. So that's something for those who want to do that on their own, inshallah, they can do that. As Bilal mentioned, there's some issues with the projector, so inshallah you can pull up on your phones. I sent out the link on the WhatsApp group. You can pull out the ziyarah. The ziyarah begins with Assalamu ala waliyillahi wa habibih. So that is where we're going to begin, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu ala waliyillahi wa habibih. السلام على خليل الله ونجيبه. السلام على صفي الله وابنها صفية. السلام على الحسين المظلوم الشهيد. السلام على أسير الكربات وَقَتِيلِ الْعَبَرَاتِ. Salam upon the one who is Asirul Kurbat, the one who is the captive of calamities, meaning his story is so intertwined with calamities and tragedies, there's no way that you observe his story and hear about his story except that what? You're reminded of his tragedies and his difficulties. And he is Qatilul Abarat. He is the one who has been martyred, and his martyrdom is always tied to tears. When you hear about his martyrdom, the natural reaction is to do what? Is to shed tears upon him. Allahumma inni ashhadu annahu waliyuka wa ibnuhu waliyik wa safiyyuka wa ibnu safiyyik al-faizu bi karamatik akramtahu bish-shahada وحبوته بالسعادة واجتبيته بطيب الولادة وجعلته سيدا من السادة وقائدا من القادة والذائدا من الذادة وأعطيته مواريث الأنبياء وجعلته حجة على خلقك من الأوصياء فأعذر في الدعاء ومنح النصح وبذل مهجته فيك ليستنقذ عبادك من الجهالة وحيرة الضلالة. These lines are the famous lines that we've heard of many times in Ziyaratul Arbaeen. because they outline the main purpose for why the Imam did what he did and the benefits that he brought to humanity. It says, he is the one, وَجَعَلْتَهُ حُجَّةً عَلَى خَلْقِكَ, you made him the proof amongst your creation, meaning anyone who looks at Imam al-Hussein knows the right path from the wrong path. And then it continues and he says, وَبَذَلَ مُهْجَتَهُ فِيكَ لِيَسْتَنْغِذَ عِبَادَكَ مِنَ الْجَهَالَةِ. He gave his life in your path so that he would save your servants from ignorance. وَحَيْرَةِ الضَّلَالَةِ, and for them being lost in misguidance. Meaning, they would know their direction in life. They would know where they're headed in life. They would know right from wrong. In order to do this, the Imam gave everything that he had. He sacrificed everything that he had so that he could do this service to humanity. Therefore, this movement that happened 1400 years ago, it is a movement that was a service to humanity for many years to come. Because beyond the crying and the mourning we do for Imam al-Hussein, he's like a guide. He's like a light that shows us right from wrong. And this is why Imam al-Sadiq referred to him as Safinatun Najat and Misbahul Huda. He's the light of guidance. His grandson said about his grandfather, my grandfather Imam al-Hussein is Misbahul Huda. He's the light of guidance and he is Safinatun Najat. He's the ark of salvation. How so? Because with the stance that he took, he showed right from wrong. وقد توازر عليه من غرته الدنيا وباع حظه بالأرض للأدنى وشرى آخرته بالثمن الأوكاس وتغطرس وتردى في هواه وأسخط نبيك وأطاع من عبادك أهل الشقاق والنفاق وحملة الأوزار المستوجبين النار فجاهدهم فيك صابرا محتسبا حتى سفك في طاعتك دمه واستبيح حرمه. So he did all of this, and who came on the other side to combat him? Who came on the other side to object to him? من توازر عليه من غرته الدنيا. Those who the dunya had tricked them. Those who the dunya had gotten the best of them. وَبَاعَ حَظَّهُ بِالْأَرْضِ لِلْأَدْنَى. The people who sold their akhirah for a little bit of pleasure that they were going to get in this world. Yes? This is what happened to Umar ibn Sa'd. Umar ibn Sa'd, who was the commander of the army on the other side on the 10th of Muharram, Yazid, Mal'un, he wasn't there. He was already in Sham. Yes? Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad wasn't there. He was in Kufa. Who was there on the 10th of Muharram? Umar ibn Sa'd was there on the 10th of Muharram. Umar ibn Sa'd didn't want to do this. But he found himself in this position because وَبَاءَ حَظَّهُ. He sold his akhirah بِالْأَرْضَ لِلْأَدْنَى, to the lowest of values, which was, hopefully I'm going to be the governor of Ray. Yes? And they say in history, it's narrated that he used to repeat to himself during those days and during these nights, should I kill the son of Fatima or should I give up the governorship of Ray? Yes? أَتْرُكُ مُلْكَ Ray. Should I actually do this? So Shaitan got him to sell his akhirah to al-arda lil-adna. The Imam, the dua is saying, the Imam, فَجَاهَدَهُمْ فِيكَ صَابِرًا مُحْتَسِبًا. He went and did jihad against them, صَابِرًا مُحْتَسِبًا. Muhtasib means a person who every time difficulty comes his way, he puts it in the hands of Allah. Every time difficulty comes his way, he leaves the hisab of it to who? To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every tragedy that Imam al-Hussein went through on the 10th of Muharram, he said, I'll leave this with you. Even when what happened to Ali al-Asghar, yes, what did he say? He said, Hawwana alay, it's only easy for me. I can only take it لِأَنَّهُ بِعَيْنِكَ or بِعَيْنِ اللَّهِ. I'm only doing this because you're watching. So we're saying that the Imam is the one who went through all of these difficulties, muhtasiba. He left everything with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. اللهم فلعنهم لعنا وبيلا وعذبهم عذابا أليما السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله السلام عليك يا ابن سيده الأوصياء أشهد أنك أمين الله وابن أمينه، عشت سعيدا ومضيت حميدا، ومت فقيدا مظلوما شهيدا. وأشهد أن الله منجز ما وعدك، ومهلك من خذلك، ومعذب من قتلك. وأشهد أنك وفيت بعهد الله وجاهدت في سبيله حتى أتاك اليقين. I bear witness أنك وفيت بعهد الله, that you acted upon the covenants that you had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the promise that you had made to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, before Imam al-Hussein started out on this journey, many came to him and told him not to go. Many people who meant well for him. They were well-intentioned. Amongst them, his own brother, Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, came to him. Amongst them, Abdullah ibn Abbas came, and others came as well. And sometimes the Imam would explain to them why he's going. When the conversation would reach a point where this person wasn't convinced anymore, the Imam would say one thing. He would say, listen, setting everything aside, if I can't convince you that I have to go on this journey, I have seen dreams that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to be shaheed in the plains of Karbala. And the Holy Prophet, I saw him in my dream. Yes, this is before he left Medina. The night when he was saying farewell to the grave of the Prophet in Medina, the narration says he had a dream. And in that dream, what happened? He saw the Prophet. The Prophet embraced him and he said, Araka murammalan bid-dima. Hussein, I see you while you're covered in your own blood. I see you while your women and children have become captives. So Imam al-Hussein, setting aside all of the arguments of why he needs to go on this path, the moment he knew for sure, because the dream of a prophet and Imam is different, yes? Different from our dreams. The moment he knew for a fact he has to go, what did he do? وَفَيْتَ بِعَهْدِ اللَّهِ. He held up his end of the promise, his end of the covenant. No matter how difficult it became, he stuck because he knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted him to go on this path. وَجَاهَدْتَ فِي سَبِيلِهِ, and you struggled in his path, حَتَّى أَتَاكَ الْيَقِينَ, until the time came where your death came and your martyrdom came. فَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ مَنْ قَتَلَكَ وَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ مَنْ ظَلَمَكَ وَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً سَمِعَتْ بِذَلِكَ فَرَضِيَتْ بِهِ. اللهم إني أشهدك أني ولي لمن والها وعدو لمن عادها بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله. أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك المدلهمات من ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المسلمين ومعقل المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي. وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمره لأمركم متبع وَنُصْرَتِي لَكُمْ مُعَدَّةٌ. I believe and I bear witness that I believe in your return. Many scholars say this refers to the concept of raj'ah, that some of the imams will be risen again when the 12th imam returns. He says, I believe in this and I have yaqeen to your return بِشَرَائِعِ دِينِي, with everything in my belief system, وَخَوَاتِيمَ عَمَلِي, and I show this and I manifest this with the way I do things. Khawatim amal means the way you manage your affairs. It says this belief that I have in you that you're going to come back, it shows itself in the way I do things. It's not just a belief in my, I don't just wear black. I don't just beat my chest. No, it shows in the way that I manage my affairs. وَخَوَاتِمَ عَمَلِي وَقَلْبِي لِقَلْبِكُمْ سِلْمٌ وَأَمْرِي لَأَمْرِكُمْ مُتَّبِعٌ. This belief that I have, it's in my heart, except وَأَمْرِي لَأَمْرِكُمْ مُتَّبِعٌ. Whatever you guys tell me to do, I act on it. This is how I show that I am also in this path. So in this ziyarah, and we'll see similar in Ziarat Warith too, constantly they tell you the belief in the heart and then the action on the ground, yes? On the practical level. Both of these have to be there. Not just the belief. Just the belief is not going to get us anywhere, yes? It says, وَأَمْرِي لِأَمْرِكُمْ مُتَّبِعٌ وَنُصْرَتِي لَكُمْ مُعَدَّةٌ. And my help for you is ready. Meaning the moment you call me, I'll come running. Nusrati lakum mu'adda means it's already prepared. Yes? You know when you want to tell someone that you're fully prepared for them, you tell them, listen, your money's ready. It's sitting here in my closet, for example, yes? Or in my office. Just come and get it. This is what you're saying. وَنُصْرَتِ لَكُمْ مُعَدَّةٌ. My assistance for you, me, my obedience towards you, it's ready. You just have to tell me what to do. Now, this is the Imam is talking about when they come back. Isn't there some things already the Ahlul Bayt are telling us to do while we're here? Yes, in the lines before, what did we read? We said, Inni waliyun liman wala. I'm a friend towards whoever is a friend of yours. You know what this is talking about? This is a brotherhood and a sisterhood, a covenant that Imam Hussein has taken from you. That if you find someone who's a friend of mine, you have to treat him well. You have to be kind to him. You have to be compassionate to him. You have to be considerate. All of these. Okay, so do you come across people who love Imam Hussein? Yes. Many of them are your own loved ones. Many of them are your own relatives. Ziyaratul Arbaeen means my help for you is ready. Okay, when you come, but right now you're saying, yes, waliyun liman wala. I'm friends with whoever friends with you. So how can you backbite about this person who's a friend of Imam al-Hussein? How can you accuse this person who's a friend of Imam al-Hussein? How can you start to have bad thoughts about this person who's a friend of Imam al-Hussein? These are all things. You know, the sixth Imam, many times in multiple narrations, when he wanted to talk about the rights that believers have on each other, he said, this is such a heavy topic, I'm not going to talk about it. Multiple narrations. He tells the narrator, this one I'm not going to go into because if I tell you the rights that your brother has on you, you're not going to act on it, and then because you know it's going to be even bigger problem for you. Some of these rights the Ahlul Bayt didn't even tell us. Amongst those rights, he said he will never trick his brother. Amongst those rights, he said he will never mock his brother. Amongst those rights, he said he will never wrong his brother. Is this what we do in our communities? This is Ziyaratul Arbaeen. Ashhadu anni waliyun liman wala. I'm friends with whoever you're friends with, and I am aduwun liman aada. And whoever has animosity towards you, I also have animosity towards them. وَنُصْرَتِي لَكُمْ مُعَدَّةٌ حَتَّى يَأْذَنَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ فَمَعَكُمْ مَعَكُمْ لَا مَعَ عَدُوِّكُمْ صَلَوَاتُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ وعلى أرواحكم وأجسادكم وشاهدكم وغائبكم وظاهركم وباطنكم آمين يا رب العالمين صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. So there's a 2 rakat salat to be done after this, but inshallah we'll do Ziyarat Warith And then you can do two rakat salats, one for Ziyaratul Arbaeen and one for Ziyaratul Warith, inshallah. We'll move on to Ziyaratul Warith. So the narrator of this ziyarah is the same narrator as the previous ziyarah as well. And it's narrated in the same book of Shaykh al-Tusi. So Safwan al-Jamal, also the sixth Imam told him, when you want to go and do ziyarah in this way. Yes? He told him a number of things. Amongst them is the ghusl that he is supposed to do. And then he continues with Ziyarat Warith itself. Inshallah, we'll move on to that. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. Everyone. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى. O Allah, I bear witness, and you're speaking to the Imam, I bear witness, O Imam al-Hussein, after all of these salams that you gave to him, what's the first thing that you mentioned that Imam al-Hussein did through his movement? The first thing you mentioned, Ashhadu annaka qad aqamta as-salah. Yes? The first thing you mentioned after all of these salams that you gave. Every one of these salams, the reason why you connect Imam al-Hussein to each one of these individuals is because his movement was there to revive the message and the cause of each one of these individuals. Yes? After these salams that you give, out of all of the things that you could have mentioned about the third Imam, what does he say you should remember him by? I bear witness that you're the one who upheld Salat. Upheld Salat is different from the one who used to pray. Praying is one thing. Then doing something in history, leaving your mark on history such that you uphold Salat is a different thing. Yes? And this is what Imam al-Hussein did. So in the lecture tonight, we're going to come back to this concept. I'm just mentioning it to plant that seed. Ashhadu annaka qad aqamta as-salah. Out of all of the things, this is the first thing that we highlight that Imam al-Hussein did. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركانه المؤمنين، وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي، وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على، وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع، صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. This part of the narration says that then you are supposed to throw yourself on the grave, yes? Because at this point, the grave doesn't have a shrine. It doesn't have any of this. Today, yes, there's 20-something million in Karbala. For many, many years, the grave of Imam al-Hussein was lonely. There was nobody there. For many, many years, there were khulafa who didn't want to have any mark, any trace of this movement. Hence, the mutawakkils of the world, they would come, yes, they would have water run over the grave, make people lose the mark of the grave, try to do whatever they can. And yet the message of Imam al-Hussein remains until today. So the narration says here, throw yourself on the grave because there is no shrine. There is none of these things that we have today, yes? And then the Imam says, you continue in this way. بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله، بأبي أنت وأمي يا أبا عبد الله، لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل السماوات والأرض، فلعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتهيأت لقتالك، يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، قصدت حرمك وأتيت إلى مشهدك، أسأل الله بالشأن الذي لك عنده وبالمحل الذي لك لديه أن يصلي على محمد وآل محمد وأن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا. O Allah, O Imam al-Hussein, قصدت حرمك, I have come to your place. وأتيت إلى مشهدك, and I have come to your presence to do what? أسأل الله بالشأن الذي لك عنده. I have come to ask Allah by the right of the status that you have in His eyes. All of this to do what? أن يصلي على محمد وآل محمد, to send my salutations upon Muhammad and آل Muhammad. وأن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة. This is my final goal and my final wish, that I want to be with you in this world with my actions, and in the akhirah, in paradise and in heaven with you. Yes? So the narration says that on the day of judgment, there are people, because they did ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein in this world, on the day of judgment, they come, they are Huddath al-Hussein. They are acquaintance of Imam al-Hussein in heaven. This is a different status of paradise. This is a different level of paradise. Yes. Inshallah, we'll move on. Then he says you go towards the area where the son of the Imam is buried, and you say the following lines. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. You come and you throw yourself on the grave. This is the grave of the son of Imam al-Hussein. السلام عليك يا ولي الله وابن وليه. لقد عظمت المصيبة وجلت الرزية بك علينا وعلى جميع المسلمين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، وأبرأ إلى الله وإليك منهم. Now you turn towards the rest of the shuhada, these special companions of Imam al-Hussein, who Imam al-Hussein said about them that I've never seen companions better than you. I've never seen companions more loyal than this group has remained with me through all of these tragedies. Every one of them from a different background, every one of them from a different corner of the world, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gathered all of them on the 10th of Muharram to reach this high status and this high level. These are the ones who bring calmness to the heart of Zainab. These are the ones who, when Zainab turned to Hussein on the night of Ashura and said, maybe these will also turn away, then some of them heard. Yes, we've heard in the Maqatil. Some of them heard, they came and they said, Wallah, if they kill us and then they burn us into ashes and they do this 100 times, we'll still give our life. This is a level of spirituality, nobody knows what this is. Nobody understands what this is. This service that they did to humanity, that Imam al-Hussein did to humanity, only possible because he had loyal companions like them. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباءه. السلام عليكم يا أسفياء الله وأوداءه. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدتي نساء. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن ابن علي الولي الناصح. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله. بأبي أنتم وأمي طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما. فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. The narration continues here, and he says, then you approach the grave and you do dua a lot. You ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for many blessings. And of course, we're reciting this ziyarah from far away, but all of this can also apply to us as well. So in this 15 minutes that we have, inshallah, the two rakat salats you can do, the many du'as and the rest of the narration that you would have been doing if you were in the plains of Karbala right now, and then inshallah we'll prepare for Maghrib. Allow salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وأن عليا حجة الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله استغفر الله الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل. لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا الله، لا إله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك، لا إله إلا أنت، أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. الله
الله أكبر، الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. وأن عليا حجة الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على خير العمل، حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد، الله الصمد، لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. سبحان الله. سبحان الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. سبحان الله والحمد لله لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Let us all together pray for the Imam of our time. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على
Inshallah, the ziyarah will be after the program.
Par Muhammad wa ala Muhammad salawat. Brothers and sisters, if you'd like to settle down, inshallah, we will start the program tonight with recitation of Quran by Brother Michael with the loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. 8:30. Yes. I'll text you here.
الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والفجر وليال عشر والشفع والوتر والليل إذا يسر هل في ذلك قسم لذي حجر ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات العماد التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد وثمود الذين جابوا الصخر بالواد وفرعون ذي الأوتاد الذين طغوا في البلاد فأكثروا فيها الفساد فصب عليهم ربك سوط عذاب إن ربك لبالمرصاد فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات.
Jazakallah, Brother Michael, for that wonderful recitation. At this time, I'd like to invite Brother Hussein for recitation of poetry with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ale Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. I will beseech you, I will grieve you into the night. I will beseech you, I will grieve you into the night. You are my master, I am alone, I come unto you. You are my master, I am alone, I come unto you, because I will be with you till the end, Hussein. In my eyes There's always tears of pain, like a river flows for your love, Hussein. Every broken heart cries out your name, cries out your name. روحي وقلبي لديك صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله يا أبا عبد الله روحي وقلبي لديك صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله يا أبا عبد الله. From your shrine I can't bear to stay apart. The flame of your love ignites my heart. Your name gives meaning to my soul. To you I raise my hands and call. From your shrine I can't bear to stay apart. The flame of your love ignites my heart. Your name gives meaning to my soul. To you I raise my hands and call. Mera Mawla, Ya Hussein Jan. Mera Mawla, Ya Hussein Jan. Hussein Janam, Hussein Janam. My touch for you will never dry. For every step I take is to you, Hussein. Till my final breath, your love will remain. Even if they take my feet and my hands, I'll come crawling to your holy land, to your holy land. روحي وقلبي لديك صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله يا أبا عبد الله. روحي وقلبي لديك صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله يا أبا عبد الله. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Jazakallah, Brother Hussein. At this time, I'd like to invite Brother Hadi Kanani for recitation of poetry with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
और दीगर सलवात। जब रिहा शाम के जिंदा से हुए अहले हरम, क्या खुशी होती दोबारा हुआ सादात का गम, जिसको अरमान रिहाई था हुई वो एक नन्ही सी लहद पर था मुसलसल मातम, सुन के फरियाद फुगा सांस रुकी जाती थी, कब्र से बाली सकीना की सदा आती थी। वतन जाने वालों मुझे भी वतन ले चलो, वतन जाने वालों, मुझे भी वतन ले चलो। मैं कैसे रहूंगी यहाँ पर, मैं कैसे रहूंगी यहाँ पर, यहाँ है भला कौन मेरा, मुझे भी वतन ले चलो, मुझे भी वतन ले चलो। रिहा हो के घर जाने वालों, मुझे भी कहीं पर बिठा लो। शहीदों के सर हैं जहाँ पर, मुझे भी वहीं पर सुला लो। मैं बाबा के सर से लिपट कर, मैं बाबा के सर से लिपट कर सफर काट लूंगी ये सारा, मुझे भी वतन ले चलो, मुझे भी वतन ले चलो। सुना है कि वापस मिले हैं तुम्हें शिम्र से मेरे गौहर, भला क्या करोगे तुम उनका अगर रह गई मैं यहाँ पर। इन्हें भी अमानत समझ कर या दफना दो जिंदान में, या मुझे भी वतन ले चलो, मुझे भी वतन ले चलो। न यूं छोड़ कर जाओ अम्मा मुझे शामियों के सहारे, यतीमी की मारी हुई को सताया बहुत जालिमों ने, बहुत खौफ आता है मुझको, बहुत खौफ आता है मुझको, तुम्हें वास्ता सैयदा का, मुझे भी वतन ले चलो, मुझे भी वतन ले चलो। पारदी का सलवात।
Jazakallah, Brother Hadi Kanani. At this time, I'd like to request Brother Amir Heather for recitation of poetry with Allah Salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
आवाज़ बुलंदतर सलवात। खत में लिखा, जिस दम क़याम कूफे में मुख्तार ने किया, जो भी थे कातिलाने शहीदाने करबला, उनमें से कोई जब भी गिरफ्तार होता था, हुक्मे अमीर पर वो सितम जब सुनाता था, मुख्तार सर को पीट के बस रोता जाता था। हाय एक रोज था ये कूफे के दरबार का समा, इब्ने नुमैर अपने सितम करता था बयां, तोड़ी थी मैंने सीने अकबर में खुद से ना, उठता था शोर खैमों से, मारा गया जवान, माँ जीते जी गुजर गई, ज़ैनब भी मर गई, एक बर्छी मेरी कितने जिगर पार कर गई। हाय एक रोज करके लाया गया हुरमलासी, बोला वो रन में मैंने चलाए थे 3 तीर, उस वक्त पहला तीर चलाया था ए अमीर, भर कर चला जो मश्क तो मजलूम का सफीर, मशकीज़े से जो तीर मेरा पार हो गया, ऐसा लगा के कत्ल अलमदार हो गया। हाय बोला नहीं ये कर्ब का है दूसरा मकाम, लाए जो अपनी गोद में बेशीर को इमाम, सूखी ज़बां फिराता था होठों पे तशना काम, यूं क़त्ल ने रसूल का, यूं क़त्ल ने ज़ारा का मैंने किया कलाम, हिल हिल गया लहद में जिगर बूतराब का, मकतल में नहर हो गया बच्चा रबाब का। हाय दरबार में ये सुन के कयामत का था समा अरे पीरो जवान रोते थे ले के हिचकियाँ बोला ये हुर्मला भी बाकी है दास्तां जिस दम तेरा हुसैन था तीरों के दरमियां वो तीर आखिरी था जो मैंने चलाया था अरे उस तीर ने हुसैन को जी से गिराया था हाय फिर शोरवा हुसैन का उठता था बार बार जब कैद करके लाया गया शिमरे बदशियार बोला वो मेरे हाथ में खंजर था तेज धार जिससे किए हुसैन की गर्दन पे तेरा वार खंजर रवा था हल्क पे इब्ने बतूल के दिल कट रहे थे साथ में आले रसूल के मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलवात
Jazakallah khair, Brother Amir Heather. For all of our reciters, inshallah, one more loud salawat. Respected Shaykh, elders, brothers, and sisters of faith, Assalamu alaikum. Our condolences to the Imam of our time on the tragedy of the Karbala and in commemoration of Arbaeen. Jazakallah Shaykh Mahdi for accepting our invitation to speak at CFK these past few nights. We look forward to your lecture tonight as we have learned much from these last few nights and hope to elevate ourselves through them. Just a few reminders before I request the Shaykh to begin. Please note there are no upcoming programs for this weekend at the City of Knowledge. Inshallah, we'll be continuing programs next week, Thursday and Friday. Please look out for our WhatsApp messages for more details, inshallah. A reminder that we do have a dedicated mother's room for young mothers and young children, for mothers and young children for their ease and to minimize disturbances in the main hall during the program. Before I request the Sheikh to begin his speech, I would like to request that we recite a Surah Fatiha for the marhumin of tonight's program sponsors. Let us also include our own marhumin and mu'minat and those of the Muslim Ummah. At this time, I'd like to request Sheikh Mahdi to ascend the member for his speech tonight and ask the brothers and sisters to move as close to the member as possible, as more people will be coming in, inshallah, with the loud Salat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Can you get me a tissue? Tissue. One more loud salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If we can recite a salawat and have everyone move forward, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. On the brother's side as well, please, inshallah. Loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala wa ala Muhammad. A third loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود أما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدع اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات اللهم صل على محمد. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, a second loud salawat. Allahumma salli. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. With the permission of the dear Shaykh, inshallah, tonight's topic is titled The Final Salat in Karbala. The reality is that one of the moments that stands out on the 10th of Muharram in the plains of Karbala is the final salat that our beloved Imam performed with him and his companions as well. But the reality is that within our communities, as much as Islam has given a central role to this act of worship and to this obligation of salat, the reality is that in our communities and in our families and within our cultures, Salat doesn't really have that central role and doesn't play that central role. You can see this very clearly many times within family gatherings or gatherings where we have with one another, where the gathering might begin a couple hours before Salat, it might end a couple hours after Salat, and nowhere as a part of this gathering is there an understanding from the attendees that within this time they have to set aside some time to go and perform their Salat. And sometimes you even hear that gatherings that are held in the name of the Ahlul Bayt, gatherings that are held to revive and remember the affairs of the Ahlul Bayt also sometimes seem to have this flaw, where people have gathered to remember the Ahlul Bayt, and yet somehow, some way, this gathering doesn't seem to stop for this obligation of Salat. And this points to something much deeper, and that is that if we went around and ask the average person, the average Muslim, Shia or Sunni, as to why is it that we foundationally and fundamentally pray? What is the main purpose behind our prayer? You would find that most of us would struggle to answer that question. There are answers to that question that we might have heard, but many of them are not convincing or sometimes become a hotbed for even more questions and even more confusion that might come to one's mind. Beyond this, one might ask, if Islam has given Salat this central role and has emphasized its importance so much and its significance so much, why is it that therefore I see people who pray, they pray well, they pray consistently, they give a lot of importance to their Salat, and still there are many other sins that they commit? I know people who pray consistently and they still backbite. I know people who pray consistently, God forbid, they're still part of a haram relationship. I know there are people who pray consistently and still they engage in many other sins that they are not supposed to be engaging in. If Salat is my way of building spirituality with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, shouldn't this person who is engaged in his Salat consistently, on time, all the time, shouldn't this show in the way that he is doing things? And isn't this a disapproval or disproving the spirituality that Salat was supposed to build for us? At another level, someone might ask, does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really care out of everything that I am doing in the 24 hours of the day, that I come and I bow down to Him 5 times a day? Doesn't Islam care more about me being a contributing citizen within society? Wouldn't Islam care more about me contributing to the well-being of myself and the well-being of the society around me? Foundationally, why does God care if I bow down to Him 5 times a day or not? And many other questions that come up in this regard. All of this while you find that the link and the correlation between Salat and between the movement of the third Imam and his presence in the plains of Karbala on the 10th of Muharram is a very strong link, and it's a very strong correlation. And you see this very clearly because if you go back to the history and you read through the events that happened before the 10th of Muharram and on the 10th of Muharram, you will find at least 2 instances where the Imam asked for the battle to either be delayed or for the battle to be paused. Both of those situations, surprisingly and interestingly, had to do with the issue of Salat. In both of those situations, the Imam wanted to engage in this act of worship. And this is why, with the importance that that battle had, the Imam asked for this battle to either be delayed or paused. So on one hand, all of these questions. On the other hand, the importance that our Imam gave to this act of worship. Therefore, tonight we want to take some time to delve into this topic. And in order to do so, we will pose the following questions. Number 1, if someone comes up to me and asks me fundamentally, what is the main purpose for you performing your 5 daily prayers? What answer should I give to this person, regardless of this person is Muslim or maybe even a non-Muslim friend or colleague? Number 2, why is it that there are people who pray, they pray well, they pray consistently, and still from time to time you see that they engage in sin? Isn't this a knock against the power of Salat? And isn't this disproving what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, that when someone prays, this prayer will keep him away from engaging in sin? Number 3, is there any benefit if I come and I stand in Salat, but I don't feel any spirituality? I don't feel like I'm building a connection with my Creator. Is there still any benefit in me engaging with the bare minimum level of Salat? Or at this point, is it better if I just skip it and move on with my life? Number 4, how can I know that my Salat has been accepted in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Number 5, what is there that I can do to invest in my Salat and take my Salat to the next level and to elevate its spiritual value? And number 6, and finally, what are the 5 lessons that we learn from the final Salat that our beloved Imam conducted on the 10th of Muharram in the plains of Karbala? Tonight, inshallah, we'll delve into these 6 questions with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Before we begin, if we can recite a salawat on both sides, and please move forward, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. On the sister side, I saw a lot of movements. On the brother side, I didn't see any movement. One more loud salawat and we can move forward, inshallah. A third loud of salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajah. Let us begin our discussion from here. If you ever found yourself in this position where someone came to you, Muslim or non-Muslim, your own child, your own relative, or maybe a non-Muslim who's only wondering what is it that you do in your lunch break and why your lunch break takes so long every day. If he came to you and asked this question to you and posed this question to you, these movements that you do, this prayer that you do, this supplication that you do, what is the main purpose behind it? You would find that you and I normally would struggle to find an answer to this question. And many of us will point to certain concepts that hopefully this person is already familiar with. We might turn to this person and say, listen, when I go and I pray my 5 daily prayers, it is, for example, a moment of thankfulness. It is a moment I take out of my life to thank my Lord for the many blessings that He has granted to me. This is one potential answer. You might turn to him and say, listen, you know how you meditate every day? I also have 5 times a day where I meditate. Another answer you might give him is, listen, the world is busy, our lives are busy. This is the 5 times during the day for a short period of time I disconnect and I connect with the divine. I connect with my spirituality. Another answer you might give to this person is that, listen, this is an opportunity I take because it is a practice of mindfulness, for example. I connect with myself, I have some introspection, I check where I am internally, and many other answers of this sort that we might give to this person. And sometimes when you're dealing with someone who's not familiar with the foundations of the faith and the context that you're coming from, any of these answers may not necessarily be the worst of answers anyways. But internally as a Muslim, none of these answers point to the foundational reason why a believer is supposed to pray. Yes, salat many times can have benefits like the benefits of being thankful. It can have benefits like the benefits of meditation. It can have benefits like the benefits of mindfulness and so on and so forth. But none of these are the foundational reason why. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us 5 times a day, you have to come and you have to perform this act of worship. So you say, okay, so what is this foundational reason that I have to come and pray? You don't pray just to be thankful. You don't pray just to be mindful. You don't pray just because it's a form of meditation. Prayer has the importance that it has in Islam because fundamentally it is the strongest way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen to humble you. Salat is a humbling process. And hence you find in salat, when you come to pray, every little aspect of salat is managed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have very little freedom when it comes to your salat. I don't know if you've noticed this, yes? When you were growing up and they were teaching you salat in Sunday school, maybe, you might have noticed this. The teacher tells you, listen, when you're going to recite, you have to recite in this language. Can't recite in that language. When you come, there's a particular time for it. When you're going to pray, you have to have a particular type of clothing on. Yes? Or at least your clothing can't have certain things on. When you come, it has to be in a place that has certain conditions. And the rules continue because every part of salat has tens of rules. When you go to ruku, your hand has to be here. When you go to sajda, this many parts of your body has to be on the ground, and so on and so forth. And many might look at these details that salat has and say, you know what? This is a knock against salat. What type of spirituality is this? That every single aspect of it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, don't do this, don't do that. You have to do it in this particular way. You have to do it in this particular form. One might think this goes against the purpose of salat. But if the purpose of salat is to humble the human being, these details work to humble the human being. Because every step of salat, you're reminded you're not in charge. There's somebody else in charge. Someone might say, when I want to talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I just talk to Him directly. Yes, Isn't this what we always say? We say between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you don't need some priest or someone, some shaykh or someone to talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what? Directly. This is what we always say. And this is always true, except 5 times a day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, listen, come and talk to me, not just for the purpose of talking to me, not just for the purpose of doing some, asking me for hajjah. These you can do outside of salat. 5 times a day, come and talk to me with all of these detailed guidelines so that you're humbled, so that you remember I'm in charge. Every one of these details is another reminder for you that you're not in charge. Someone else is in charge. Can salat have benefits like mindfulness and thankfulness? Yes, absolutely, no doubt about it. But you know what all of those have in common? All of those, you can sit on your couch and do them. Isn't this true? All of those, you can take 5 minutes, 10 minutes out of your day and sit there and say, in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to be mindful. In the next 5 minutes, I'm going to be thankful. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, salat is not just for these things. Salat is to humble you. So you can't sit on the couch and do it. You have to get up and show me your humility. Why? Because he's some king who, na'udhu billah, has some insecurity, is like, yes, you have to come and bow down. No, because this is the only way you will be humbled. This is the only way your ego is going to be weakened. There's no other way. This recipe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to us is a unique recipe that if you mess with any part of it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, this is not salat anymore. Yes? If you come in your salat, you do your sajda before your ruku, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no. There is some secret in this form of actions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I want you to do it this way, and I want you to do it this way exactly, and you are reminded in the process that I am in charge, you're not in charge. Yes, other times of the day, you want to talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala normally? Absolutely, yes, that's wonderful. But 5 times a day, you're not supposed to just talk to Him. 5 times a day, you're supposed to be reminded that He's in charge, you're nobody. This is the foundational reason why we pray. If you want to understand this concept better, I'll give you an example. This is the bad version of the example. Salat is the good version of this example, yes? When I explain, you'll understand why I mentioned that disclaimer. If you ever went into the army, and when you go into the army, the first thing they want to do in the army is to remove the ego of this soldier. Because they want this soldier to be what? They want the soldier to be fully obedient towards the commands that come down through this hierarchy. What's the first thing they do to remind him and to teach him, you're not in charge, we're in charge over here? They say you have to get this haircut. Why? Because if you get this haircut in combat, you're going to do better? No, because you have to get this haircut because we say so, so you know you're not in charge. You're going to go to sleep at this time. Why? Because if I don't go to sleep at this time, my skills are going to be affected. No, because we're in charge, you're not in charge. From now on, you can only eat like this. You can only sleep like this. When we speak to you, you respond with sir, yes, sir, or whatever that thing is that they say. All of these detailed guidelines and regulations. Why? Because these impact his skills in battle? No, they impact his obedience. Now that's the bad version, that's the army where you have some person who has evil intentions telling you to do stuff. Replace that sergeant with a God who is merciful, and replace the commands that he's going to give you instead of go kill this person and go kill that person, is going to be go save this person and go save that person. But you're not going to do that if you think you're in charge. You will do that if your ego is weakened and you know he's in charge. Now he tells you go give charity, you'll go give charity. Now he tells you be patient with your loved ones. You'll be patient with your loved ones. Therefore, the foundational reason why we pray and why salat comes with so many rules and regulations is because it is a humbling process with the human being. And if you want to understand this better, take a look at the 2 dhikr that have foundational place and central role in all of your salat. When you start your salat, do you start your salat with Allah who is the merciful one? That's not how you start your salat. I hope not, yes? When you start your salat, do you say, I begin by the name of Allah, the one who is beautiful and loves beauty? This is not how you start your salat. You don't start with, oh Allah, I start with your name, the forgiving one. God is all of these things. But that's not what you start your salat with. What do you start your salat with? Allahu Akbar. He's in charge. This is the main purpose behind salat. Every ruku and sajda that you do, what is the main central dhikr that you say? It's a dhikr that tells you you're nobody, he's everything. That is the dhikr of subhanallah. Yes, subhanallah means what? He's perfect. He has no flaws. What about you? I'm nothing. Subhanallah, you're the best one. You are the one who does everything properly. If there are any flaws, it's from who? It's from me. This is why these adhkar have a central role in the salat of the human being. And because the main purpose behind your salat is this humility and this humbleness, even if someone comes and prays and doesn't feel any spirituality, that salat is still fulfilling the purpose it's supposed to fulfill. I come and I pray, I don't feel anything. I don't feel that deep connection. I don't feel like the angels are rubbing their wings on me. I don't feel like I am now soaring and ascending in the skies. Does my salat have value? Does my salat, is it fulfilling the purpose it was supposed to fulfill? Absolutely, maybe even more. Because that's a humbling experience. Because you're being reminded, I'm doing this because he's in charge. Yes? And I'll share this story with you from a shaykh from back in the day. His name was Akhund Kashi. Yes, we'll call him Shaykh Kashi. Shaykh Kashi was a person of spirituality. He was known as the person of spirituality within his town. Towns were smaller back in the day. They knew people. These are the people who are come from the masjid and so on and so forth. Akhund Kashi says, his students say, one day he was praying in the masjid and he was preparing for his salat. He was outside, back in the day they had these hawd, right? They used to do their wudu outside. They say Akhund Kashi was doing his wudu outside. But of course, because he was a person of spirituality, his wudu was not like our wudu. You know, our wudu is like splish splash, this. His wudu was with the proper etiquette. There's azkar, there's you take your time, there's how many times you walk, all of these details and etiquette, yes? Because wudu is this important. So they say Akhund Kashi was there and he was doing his wudu, and he was, of course, taking a while to do his wudu because he wanted to do it with the proper etiquette. While he was performing his wudu, then all of a sudden he saw someone else came, did some splish splash thing, went inside and started praying. He said, why is this guy in such a rush? This is not how salat is done. You're not supposed to rush through your salat. And he said, whatever, he's doing his salat. Akhund Kashi, before he could end his wudu, he came to the end of his wudu. This guy had done 2 salats and he was heading out. This guy was almost already done. So he started to walk out. This shaykh, he was doing his masah. He saw him walking. He said, hey, wait a second. Where are you going? Come here. He said, yes, shaykh, what is it? He said, what was this thing you did? He said, don't worry about it. He said, no, I saw you were doing was this salat you did? 8 rakats in 2 minutes and 30 seconds? Was this what you did? He said, yeah, I did my dhuhr asr. I did it quickly. Akhund, this shaykh, he said, I turned to him. I said, no, this is not how you do salat. This salat, it's not worth anything. He said, that man turned back towards me. He said, Shaykh, my salat is different from your salat. When I come to do salat, I don't come to do it with all of the etiquette and all of this. But I do when I come and I perform my salat just to tell God that I'm his servant, he's boss, and I'm out. This shaykh says, I remembered that line for the rest of my life. Yes, is this how Ahl Bayt taught us to pray? No. This is not how Ahl Bayt taught us to pray, yes? But in just showing up to salat, there's a lot of humility. It brings a lot of humility. That I may not even connect with my salat, but I'm showing up because he's boss, because he's in charge. He said, Shaykh, I don't do my salat for the same purpose that you do your salat. I do my salat just to show up and say, I'm a nobody. I'm a servant, your boss. Afterwards, I head out. This is why salat has this foundational place in Islam. Because without it, it shows your humility is lacking. And that's a bigger problem than a number of other sins that one might engage in. Hence the companion of the sixth Imam, Al-Imam As-Sadiq, salawatullahi salamu alayhi. He asked him, he said, Ya Abu Abdullah, I've heard that in your narrations, you refer to a person who doesn't pray at all. Not a person who skips sometimes and all. A person who doesn't pray at all, that he is spiritually a kafir. But a person who commits other sins, you don't call him spiritually kafir. I say spiritually because publicly speaking and, jurisprudentially speaking, this person is of course still what? Still Muslim, yes? But he's this close to kufr. This is in multiple narrations. Shia and Sunni have narrated this concept, by the way. This is not only in our narrations, in other narrations as well. That the one who fundamentally, out of arrogance, he says, I don't care about salat. I'm just going to move on with my life. This person is on the borderline of kufr. Multiple narrations point this out. He said, why? He said, because the one who does other sins, he goes and he drinks. He listens to haram music. These are great sins, by the way. These are major sins, by the way. We're not belittling any of this. But he said the one who goes and does these things, Shaitan is tricking him through the pleasure that he associates with that sin. He thinks if he goes and he parties, he's going to have a great time. So that's what Shaitan is utilizing to trick him. But the one who doesn't pray, he's doing this foundationally out of arrogance. That's going to be a bigger problem for him on the day of judgment. That's what got Shaitan kicked out of hellfire, yes? Arrogance. Hence, you find multiple narrations in which the Ahlul Bayt said, listen, if you don't pray, meaning you just don't care about it, you don't engage in it at all, this person is on the borderline of kufr. Someone might say, well, these are narrations, I don't know about it. Look at the verses of the Quran. In Surah Al-Muddathir, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala narrates for us the conversation that's going to happen between people on the day of judgment. Some of them, people who are already in hellfire. And so they're asked the question that all of us would be asking them. مَا سَلَكَكُمْ فِي سَقَرٍ? What happened that you ended up here? And it's interesting because they mentioned 4 or 5 different things. وَكُنَّا نُكَذِّبُ بِيَوْمِ الدِّينِ. We didn't take care of the poor. We used to deny the day of judgment. All of these things they mention, yes. But you know what the first thing is they mention? لَمْ نَكُ مِنَ الْمُصَلِّينَ. We didn't used to pray. It's almost as if the Quran is saying all of it started from here. All of the other issues that they ran into started from where? لَمْ نَكُ مِنَ الْمُصَلِّينَ. Our major fundamental issue was that we were not amongst those who prayed. So when we look at Islam, this is the one line I want you to remember. When we look at Islam, brothers and sisters, you don't find salat being one of your duties as a Muslim. If you gave a Muslim today a list and you told him, tell me 10 of the things that you have to do as a Muslim, he'll give you a list, yes? Islam has a hierarchy. Islam has a priority. In Islam, salat is not one of the things that you do. Salat is that thing that you do so that you can do the other things. Salat is that one duty so that you can take care of the other duties. Without this one, you're not even going to get to the other ones. This is the foundational role that salat has. This is why the narrations kept coming and saying, Amududdin, Amud, it's the column of your faith, it's the column of your faith. Because if you don't take care of this one, this tent is never going to be upright. It's always going to fall. Salat is that thing that enables you to do everything else. Without salat, you're not going anywhere. Without salat, I'm not going far in my spirituality. Salat is that thing that has that foundational role. Hence why in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to speak about people who obey Him and people who fear Him. For those who were here last night, fear Him, i.e. fearing the consequences of His deeds. Accountability, yes? What does the Quran say? The Quran says, Ya Rasulullah, إِنَّمَا تُنذِرُ الَّذِينَ يَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُم بِالْغَيْبِ. You can only get people to listen who fear their Lord, وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةِ, and those who pray. If he's not praying, Ya Rasulullah, he's not going to care what you have to say. If he's not praying, the inzar, the warning that you're going to give him, it's not going to have a benefit. Hence, the Quran made a claim about salat. Maybe it didn't make this claim in this form and in this fashion for any of the other acts of worship that you and I engage in. The Quran said, "Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar." Salat will forbid you from doing bad things. Al-fahsha, al-munkar, all bad things. The verse said, tanha, it forbids you. Now, if it forbids you, does this mean you can still end up doing some of those wrong things? Sure. Hence, you find people who pray and they still make mistakes. You and I might be amongst them. But the Quran said, when you pray, tanha, it forbids you. It becomes a voice inside of you that every time you come across sin, starts yelling at you. It starts shouting at you. The better your salat, the louder the voice inside of you. Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. Yes? They say there was this young man, he used to pray with the prophets. When the prophet came to Medina, he used to pray with the prophet. People came to the prophet. They say, Ya Rasulullah, this guy who prays behind you, we have to tell you something about him. He prays behind you in the masjid. But when he goes outside of the masjid, he lives a different life. He's doing other things outside of the masjid. What did the prophet say? He said, Inna salatahu satanha. If he continues with his prayer, eventually his prayer will forbid him from doing these things. And what does the narration say? Falam yalbath and tab. Before you knew it, he had repented from those. Yes? Therefore, I'm going to mention a foundational principle in Islam. Yes? If I struggle with any sin, I have to first take a look at what my salat looks like. If I'm not praying it, obviously there's issues. If I am praying it, then I need to invest in it more. Shaykh, I struggle with lowering my gaze. Invest in your salat. Shaykh, I struggle with good akhlaq in the house. Invest in your salat. Shaykh, I struggle with backbiting. Invest in your salat. Ya Allah, I struggle with being kind to other members of my family. Invest in your salat. Every sin you can possibly think of under the sun, the first thing you have to check is what? Your salat. First of all, do you do it consistently? Second of all, are you investing in it? How do we invest in salat? We're going to get to it momentarily. But are you investing in the salat? Every sin. In each one of these items, there might be other things that you also might have to do. But this is definitely one of them. You know, when you go to the doctor for 20 different illnesses, yes? Before the doctor asks you about your particular illness and the particular symptoms that you have, what are those boring questions they always ask at the beginning? Yes, he pulls up to you and he says, okay, are you getting enough sleep? Say, doc, I'm here because of this symptom, this symptom, this symptom. He says, yes, we'll get to those, but first, because the problem might just be from here. He says, first, are you getting enough sleep? Are you having a proper diet? Is there anything that's giving you too much stress? Why? Because if these foundations aren't working, whatever other drug he gives you is not going to work. Salat is like this. Is this person investing in his salat properly or not? Recite a salawat, please. Okay, so I want to know if my salat is accepted, if I'm doing a good job with my salat. Knowing if you're going to do a good job with your salat and whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted your salat or not, the Ahl Bayt gave us a very clear sign. Many times you do your salat, you walk away, you say, I wonder if God accepted this. After salat, you shake hands with the person beside you, you say, Taqabbal Allah, may Allah accept your act of worship. Not necessarily knowing if He's actually going to do it or not. You do this dua for one another, yes? But the Ahlul Bayt very clearly told us, there's a clear sign. You can tell if that salat is going to be accepted or not. What does Al-Imam As-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, He says, if you want to know if your salat was accepted, go and see how you reacted when sin was presented to you after that salat. Didn't the Quran say, Inna salata tanha? Salat forbids you. Therefore, if you want to know if your salat was accepted, how much of it was accepted, to what extent it was accepted, go and see how much your salat does tanha of you. How much does your salat forbid you from sin? The next time you come across sin, is it just like before? Well, then this salat had some issues. Then this salat didn't carry the weight it was supposed to carry. Or this time you come across sin and it's more difficult for you to engage in it. Yes? Because salat has this central role, there is a particular ruling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set for salat. He did not set this ruling for any of the other obligations we have in Islam. Yes? You might say, what is this obligation? This is that obligation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, when it comes to salat, it is so critical for me. It is so important for me. Not only do you have to do it, if you do it sometimes and not other times, and you're taking it lightly, that's also a sin. That's not the case with any other obligation in Islam. In Islam, if someone comes and fasts and he says, I don't care, but whatever, we'll fast today. For that day, there's no punishment. He fasted. He did his duty that day. Yes? With salat, you have to do it, and you can't take it lightly either. So if I come and I'm the type of person who prays sometimes and then other times I'm like, whatever, this is istighfaf bis salat. This is taking salat lightly. Islam said you have to pray and then you also can't take it lightly either. Only when it came to salat. The other obligations, they don't have this extra ruling. This is only istighfaf bis salat. This is that same istighfaf bis salat when the Ahl Bayt on multiple occasions were in their deathbed. They said the one who does this, takes his salat lightly, don't tell him not to come for our shafa'ah on the Day of Judgment. Tell him not to come our way. The Prophet Muhammadin al-Mustafa salawatullahi salamu alayhi, he said the one who foundationally takes salat lightly, when he comes on the Day of Judgment, la yaridu alayya al-hawd. Tell him not to come towards Hawd al-Kawthar. That place where I'm greeting my followers. This person, stay away. This is scary. And it's in multiple narrations. Yes? This is the place that salat has. Now someone might ask, yes? And by someone, I mean like all of us, yes? All of us might have this question from point to point or time to time. Shaykh, I see people, they pray and they pray consistently, they pray very well, but they engage in other sins. But the Quran said this is gonna build your spirituality, it's amazing, it's awesome, all of this kind of stuff. But this person, he prays and he still commits these sins. 3 points you have to remember. First of all, which part of your faith is it that by abiding by just that one part, it guarantees that you will never commit sins in any other area? There is no such a thing in Islam. You say, I don't want to pray because this person prays, it doesn't work for him. Yes, like it's a drug or an ingredient or a recipe, right? He used this one and it didn't work for him. Well, I ask you, which part of Islam do you believe in? Do you believe in fasting? Aren't there people who fast and they still what? They still commit sins? Aren't there people who give charity and they still commit sins? Aren't there people who are extremely generous and then when they come in the home, they're like a monster to their own loved ones? If you go based on this logic, your whole faith will fall apart. What part of your faith is it that if you do it, it guarantees you'll never commit a sin? Please tell me. I would love to know. Salat makes it less likely for you to sin. Guarantee you want? No, there's no guarantee. This is point number one. If you approach faith like this, you apply the same logic to any part of your faith. You're not going to be able to find an answer to that question. What part of faith is it if you do it, it will guarantee that you will never ever commit a sin in other fields? There's no such a thing. So what you're saying, all of this faith, you have to throw it away now. Because there's no part of it that if you do, it guarantees you'll never do anything wrong. This is number one. Number two, this person who commits sins. Why aren't you comparing oranges with oranges and apples with apples? You're comparing oranges with apples. You say, look at Mr. Number One. This guy, he doesn't pray, but he has good akhlaq. Mr. Number Two, he prays, but he has bad akhlaq. So you're comparing this one to this one. You're saying, look, Salat doesn't have the power that the Quran was talking about. This is oranges and apples you're comparing to one another. No, compare Mr. Number Two between the situation where he prays and the situation that he doesn't pray. Who's to say if this person didn't pray, he would be a lot worse off than he is right now? Maybe this salat that he's doing right now is what's stopping him from being a lot worse. You're comparing him to another person. Don't compare him to another person. Compare him between the two situations where he's praying and he is not praying, and then we'll see. Salat has this power. Number two. Number three, this person that you say he prays and he prays consistently. Sometimes it's someone else, sometimes it might be myself. Is he investing in his salat or he's just doing it? You're asking for the full power of salat to present itself, yes? Okay, I ask you, did this person do a proper salat or he just winged it? Did he invest in his salat or he's just doing this thing? If he invested in his salat, day by day, this salat, inshallah, will help him on this path. And you might say, what can I do to invest in my salat? The most important thing that one can do to invest in his salat, to take his salat to the next level, is an act that takes no extra time from him. No extra time. How long does it take for you to pray a 4 rakat salat? 2 minutes and 30 seconds? 4 minutes, 5 minutes? Wonderful. You don't have to commit a second extra. But you can still take your salat to the next level. You say, how? Set in that 4 minutes, you have to pay attention in your salat. Invest in your salat. Salat is something that's supposed to be perfected over life. Then when you perfect it, then the results start to perfect themselves as well. Then that voice inside of the human being starts to become stronger and stronger. And this is why you find, brothers and sisters, Karbala and Salat had such a strong link and connection with each other. Where do we see this? We see this when Imam al-Hussein, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, when the Imam, he delayed Salat twice in the plains of Karbala. Yes? When was the first time? The first time was on the night of the 10th of Muharram. On the night of the 10th of Muharram, we can keep the lights on, we still have a long way to go. On the night of the 10th of Muharram, when the army of Umar ibn Sa'd was coming towards the tents of Imam al-Hussein in the middle of the night, what happened? The news came to Imam al-Hussein that the army is already attacking. Because Umar ibn Sa'd, to enter his troops, he said, Ya khayl Allah irkabi, why don't you go ahead and attack at night? So what happened? Imam al-Hussein sent Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas with 20 riders. And what did Imam al-Hussein tell him? He said, my brother, go and speak to them. Tell them to delay this battle until tomorrow. Because of what? Because I want to take tonight to pray. Salat. When did the Imam again pause this battle? On the 10th of Muharram at noontime, where his companion came to him, Abu Thumama as-Sa'idi, came to him and he said, Ya ibn Rasulullah, Ya Abu Abdullah, the time of Salat has now come. In this situation also, the Imam, he delayed the Salat. But there are 5 lessons that we can learn from the short interaction that the third Imam has with Abu Thumama as-Sa'idi. A loud salawat, please. What did Abu Thumama as-Sa'idi say? Abu Thumama came, he said, Ya Abu Abdullah, ha'ulai iqtarabu mink. The army has gotten closer. But I want to tell you something and I want to make a promise to you. Before they get to you, they will get to me. In other words, what is he saying? They're not going to get their hands on you until I give my life for you before them. Yes? And then he said, the only thing is, however, I don't want to meet Allah without having done this salat that is ahead of us. This is the companions of Imam Hussein. Then there are people, we beat our chest and we wear black and salat is still not a thing. I don't know where we learned this from. This is not from Imam Hussein. If I do this, it's not from Imam Hussein. Abu Thumama is said, أُحِبُّ أَنْ أَلْقَ اللَّهِ, I want to meet Allah وَقَدْ صَلَّيْتُ هَذِهِ الصَّلَاةِ, while I have performed this salat. So if you look in the words of Abu Thumama, and this is the first point, if you look in the words of Abu Thumama, what do you pick up very quickly? You pick up that the time of salat on the 10th of Muharram didn't come at a particular scheduled time. It came in the heat of the battle. Before this, there were a number of attacks on the camp and on the troops of Imam al-Hussein. On a number of occasions, Imam al-Hussein has sent out individual warriors to attack on the other side. Yes, Habib ibn Mudahir has already been martyred. Hur has already been martyred. In the midst of all of this, Abu Thumama says, هَؤُلَاءِ اِقْتَرَبُوا مِنْكَ, they're getting very close to you. But, O Imam al-Hussein, let's do this salat. In the heat of the battle, in the midst of all of it. This is point number one. Then what happened? Imam al-Hussein responded to him. He said, "Oh Abu Thumama, this is great that you brought this up. I pray that Allah makes you amongst the musalleen. I pray that Allah makes you amongst those who uphold prayer." I ask you a question, Abu Thumama. He's going to be martyred in a couple minutes in the plains of Karbala. He's already engaging in defending the grandson of the prophets. What greater act of worship is there than performing this act of worship? And yet Imam al-Hussein did what dua for him? He said, "May Allah make you amongst the musalleen." I ask you, sometimes people say, "Shaykh, I need motivation." Here's motivation. If I ask you, do you want to be a part of those who Imam al-Hussein prayed for on the 10th of Muharram? What greater motivation? What greater incentive? You weren't there, you didn't witness that, but you can decide something tonight where you are amongst those that Imam al-Hussein remembered on that day. What greater motivation? He said, "Abu Thumama, thank you for reminding me. May Allah make you amongst the musalleen." This is number two. Then he continued. Then he said this short line. He said, "Abu Thumama, hada awwal waqtiha." Abu Thumama, this is the beginning of the time of salat. On the 10th of Muharram. He said, this is the beginning of the time of salat. This is point number three. The Imam said, I'm going to pray, but then I'm going to pray on time. Hence the narration of Imam al-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Says what? He says, between praying at the beginning of the time and praying later outside of the prime time, outside of the fadila time, outside of the preferred time. He says between these two, the difference between them is like the difference between this world and the akhirah. There's literally a world of difference between the two. You know how when we want to say there's a big difference between two things, we say what? There's a world of difference. The Imam is saying literally there's a world of difference between praying on time and just kicking it down the road. He said, "Hada awwal waqtiha." Then the Imam started to engage in salat, except they didn't engage in normal salat. Why? Because on the other side, there's an army. They can attack at any point. So what salat did they do? They did a salat known as Salatul Khawf. You say, what is Salatul Khawf? Salatul Khawf is God's way of telling you that even if you're in the middle of the battlefield and you're scared for your life, we have to find a way for you to do your salat. Salatul Khawf is when the Imam, he does the first rak'ah, before he gets up for the second rak'ah, when he gets up, he continues and he prolongs it. The people behind him quickly finish the second rak'ah, the new group comes. They switch places so that they can defend. The new group comes and then the Imam continues his second rak'ah and it's their first rak'ah and they add one rak'ah afterwards. Why do all these details matter? These details matter because God is telling you, even when you're in khawf, I'm going to try to find a way so that you can do this salat thing in the middle of battle. If your Imam can find a place in the middle of battle to do his salat, can't you and I find a place in the middle of a project to come and do our salat? And then the final point and the final lesson, because when Imam al-Hussein turned to Abu Thumama and he said, "Abu Thumama, what a wonderful reminder. Go and tell them to stop the war. Go and tell them to pause the war so that we can do our salat." The people on the other side, they didn't pause the war. The people on the other side, the arrows kept coming and the spears kept coming. And what did Imam al-Hussein do? One of his companions stood in front of Imam al-Hussein, Abdullah ibn Sa'id. Yes? And Abdullah ibn Sa'id, the narration says he stood in front of the Imam, and every time the Imam went to ruku, he would bend his body so that the arrows hit him and didn't hit Imam al-Hussein on that day. Yes? And I ask you, on that day, Abdullah and Imam al-Hussein, were they protecting themselves or were they protecting Salat as a concept, as a practice? Hence why in Ziarat Warith, before you mention anything of the fada'il of your Imam, you say what? Ashhadu, I bear witness, annaka qad aqamta as-salah. You are the one who upheld Salat. Imam al-Hussein did so many other things, but this is the first thing Ziarat Warith points out. You're the one who upheld Salat, yes? And the narration says Abdullah kept moving left and right, and more arrows came on his body until the Salat ended. And what happened? They came to the body and they started to notice that on the body, other than the spears and many other wounds, 13 arrows have landed on the body of Abdullah. And even in those moments, Abdullah, he started to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, Allahumma abligh nabiyyaka anni as-salam. Oh Allah, send my salams to your prophets. And tell him of the pain that I went through, and the tragedy that I went through, and the agony that I went through. All of this I did to protect the grandson of your prophets. Sallallahu alayka ya Abu Abdullah, sallallahu alayka ya ibn Rasulullah. Imagine when the salat of Imam al-Hussein comes to an end, and he comes and he sees Abdullah on the ground, and he sees all of these arrows in his body, and the wounds in his body, and still he is speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imagine the pain that Imam al-Hussein went through in those moments. Imagine what Imam al-Hussein must have whispered in the ears of Abdullah. He must have turned to Abdullah and said, Abdullah, you have no idea what you did today. You protected Salat today. May Allah bless you in heaven. But at the same time, Hussein's eyes must be full of tears, because everything that he's seeing on the 10th of Muharram is full of calamities. It's full of tragedies. It's all wounds and blood and spears and arrows in bodies. And we tell Imam al-Hussein on a night like this, Ya Imam al-Hussein, be patient with the tragedy of Abdullah, because on this day and after this salat, there's gonna come many other moments, Ya Imam al-Hussein, that will be far more difficult for you. They will be far more painful for you. Oh Imam al-Hussein, be patient with the death of Abdullah and his martyrdom, because there's gonna come a point on the 10th of Muharram, something's gonna happen near Furat. Something is gonna happen near Alqama. When you're coming back, you're gonna be holding your back and you're gonna be saying, Al-an in kasara dhahri, now my back is broken. Wa qallat hilati, and I can't take it anymore. And my patience is moving away. I can't take this pain anymore. When did Hussein say these lines? There came a moment on the 10th of Muharram where Abu al-Fadl Abbas, he could hear the al-atash of these children. And on the other side, he saw this army that whoever goes to the battlefield comes back in pieces. At one point, Abu al-Fadl Abbas made his way into the tent of Imam al-Hussein. Imagine the pain that came to Hussein the moment he saw Abu al-Fadl Abbas walking in, because he knows this is the end of all of this. He knows the moment Abbas goes, all of these women and children, they have lost all of their hope. This is the one who defends the tents. This is the one who defends the women and the children. The moment Abu al-Fadl Abbas came through, he said, Ya akhi, halli min rukhsatin, will you give me permission? I swear, this must have broken the heart of Hussein. How can he stand there? And his flag bearer is asking him for permission to go to the battlefield. Hussein looked at him, he said, my brother, Ya akhi, Anta sahibul liwa'i, you're the one who carries my flag. You're the one, if you go, there's nobody left anymore. If you go, who's gonna protect these children? If you go, who's gonna protect these women? If you go, when these women and children get scared, who will they look out for? Who will they seek in the tents? Ya Abbas, you don't have to go right now. And Abbas said, Ya akhi, laqad dhaqa sadri, my heart can't take it anymore. My chest can't take it anymore. It's too painful. What was Abbas talking about? Abbas was talking about Qasim going back to the battlefield and then coming back in pieces, yes? Abbas was talking about Ali al-Akbar going to the battlefield and then Hussein dragging his body to the end of the tents. Abbas was talking about Aoun and Muhammad. Abbas has witnessed all of these tragedies on the 10th of Muharram. He said, Ya akhi, laqad dhaqa sadri, my chest can't take it anymore. I can't take this pain anymore. Let me go. And Hussein said, Abbas, if you're gonna go, at least go and respond to the call of these children. What were the children calling? They kept calling on the 10th of Muharram. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, we're thirsty. We need some water. Is our uncle gonna go and bring some water for us? The narration says Abul Fadl Abbas got on his horse only with a spear, maybe some mashks with him. He made his way towards the army, towards Furat. He made his way through the army. Going there and getting there was doable for Abbas. But then when he filled up this mashk, the moment he got back on his horse, he could tell the return is going to be different. The return is going to be far more dangerous. Why? Because they no longer came to attack Abbas directly. Now all of a sudden Abbas saw, as he's heading back, the arrows from every corner are coming his way. The arrows from every angle are coming his way. And these arrows start to hit the body of Abul Fadl Abbas. And then someone came out and struck him on his arm. And someone came out and struck him on his left arm. And then one of these arrows sat on the mashk. One of these arrows sat on the water skin of Abbas. And as the water dripped away, the tears of Abbas also dripped away on the 10th of Muharram. And in the midst of this chaos, someone struck Abul Fadl Abbas on the head. He fell from the horse without any hands. And this is when he called out, Ya akha, adrik akha. My brother, come, I need you. Hussein was fearful of this moment. Hussein knew this moment was going to come eventually. Hussein ran into the battlefield faster than ever before. When the dust settled, they saw Hussein sitting by the body of Abul Fadl. What did they say to each other in those moments? We don't know exactly. But it must have been the case that Hussein turned to Abbas and said, Abbas, you went and you left me with all of these difficulties. You left me with the tragedy of losing my brother. My brother, all of these women and children were waiting for this water. And what did Abbas go through in those moments? Maybe in those moments, Fatima Zahra came to visit Abbas. Maybe in those moments, Fatima Zahra said, Abbas, you're my child now. You're my son now. Who put these arrows in your body? Who threw these spears on you? Who cut off your arms like this? Who put you through all of this pain? This is when Hussein started to walk back. Abbas was too ashamed to be brought back to the tents. He started to walk back and he kept saying this one line, Al-an inkasara dhahri. Now my back is broken. وَقَلَّتْ حِيلَتِي. And I can't take it anymore. The patience I had is all gone away. I don't know what to do anymore. They say Hussein came all the way back to the tents. He did one thing. He took the column of the tent of Abbas and he pulled it. And all of the women and children immediately knew what this means when the tent fell. You know who does the masa'ib of Abbas better than anyone else? You know who knows the pain of Abul Fadl Abbas better than anyone else? Leave it to a mother to do the masa'ib of her own son. Leave it to a mother to explain what happened to her own son. Banin wasn't there, but when Abbas was struck in the battlefield, I'm sure her heart skipped a beat. I'm sure Banin felt something in Medina. When they came back to Medina, Zainab said, Banin, let me tell you about Abbas. And she kept telling me about Hussein. Tell me about my son Hussein. When Banin finally heard about Abbas, she used to walk around and recite her own masa'ib. She used to say, La tad'uwanni wayka Banini. Don't call me Banin anymore. Don't call me the mother of children anymore. I had 4 children like lions. All of them got martyred in Karbala. And then she ends with this line. She says, Layta shi'ri, I just really want to know, is it true that when Abbas, my son, went to the battlefield, they cut off his arms and they struck him on the head and he fell on the ground without any hands to protect him? ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. Everyone. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى. One more time, imagine yourself in Karbala. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صراط الذين ماتم حسين. يا حسين 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 يا حسين
قید میری گزر گئی بھیا تیرا چہلوں منانے آئی ہوں قید میری گزر گئی بھیا تیرا چہلوں منانے آئی ہوں قید میری گزر گئی بھیا تیرا چہلوں منانے آئی ہوں قید میری گزر گئی بھیا وہ جو رسی تھی میرے ہاتھوں میں تھک کے آنکھیں اتر گئی بھیا قید میری گزر گئی بھیا تیرا چہلوں منانے آئی ہوں قید میری तेरा चहलो मनाने आई हूँ, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया। वो जो रस्सी थी मेरे हाथों में, थक के आंखें उतर गई भैया, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया। तेरा चहलो मनाने आई हूँ, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया। तेरा चहलो मनाने आई हूँ, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया। कत्ल छुपने नहीं दिया तेरा, हर जगह खून का दिया पुरसा। कत्ल छुपने नहीं दिया तेरा, हर जगह खून का दिया पुरसा। तेरे मकतल से शाम जिंदा तक खून में हो के तर गई भैया, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया। तेरा चहलो मनाने आई हूँ, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया। तेरा चहलो मनाने आई हूँ, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया। कत्ल छुपने नहीं दिया तेरा, हर जगह खून का दिया पुरसा। कत्ल छुपने नहीं दिया तेरा, हर जगह खून का दिया पुरसा। तेरे मकतल से शाम जिंदा तक खून में हो के तर गई भैया, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया। तेरा चहलो मनाने आई हूँ, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया। तेरा चहलो मनाने आई हूँ, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया। वो जो असग़र के बाद कहती थी, अब मेरा सिरा सकीना है। वो जो असग़र के बाद कहती थी, अब मेरा सिरा सकीना है। कैसे साए में उसको लाऊं मैं, अब सकीना भी मर गई भैया, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया। तेरा चहलो मनाने आई हूँ, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया। तेरा चहलो मनाने आई हूँ, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया। एक नज़े पे तेरा सर था, एक नज़े पे मेरी चादर थी। एक नज़े पे तेरा सर था, एक नज़े पे मेरी चादर थी। तेरी आंखें तो बंद थी पर मैं शाम तक नांगे सर गई भैया, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया। तेरा चहलो मनाने आई हूँ, कैद मेरी गुजर गई भैया।
या हुसैन या हुसैन
या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन।
जब शाम के जिंदा से ज़ैनब जो रिहा होगी, जब शाम के जिंदा से ज़ैनब जो रिहा होगी, जब जब शाम के जिंदा से ज़ैनब जो रिहा होगी, जब शाम के जिंदा से
ज़ैनब जो रिहा होगी,
जाएगी मदीने जब उस वक्त भला बीबी तेरे सर पे रिदा होगी।
रिदा है रिदा लुटी जो दश्त में थी ज़ैनब बेरिदा, किसी दिल की सदा कहाँ हो बावफा नहीं कोई पता, मेरी मदद को आ है तू इमाम है, बाजार है सजाद पत्थर मारते ये शमी बेहया, गई है बेरिदा तथीरे अंबिया, नबी की आल हूँ कोई तो दे रिदा है रिदा है रिदा।
जब शाम के जिंदा से ज़ैनब जो रिहा होगी, जब शाम के जिंदा से होगी, जब शाम के जिंदा से नाना से मिलोगी जब हाथों को छुपाओगी, और माँ को बाजारों के हालात सुनाओगी। माँ लहद में तड़पेगी तेरे लुटने का सुन सुन कर, और तुझ पे फिदा होगी। जब शाम के जिंदा से ज़ैनब जो रिहा होगी, जब शाम के जिंदा से ज़ैनब जो रिहा होगी, जब शाम के जिंदा से ज़ैनब जो रिहा होगी। बीमार की आँखों से फिर खून सा बरसेगा, किस जुर्म में कैदी हो हर कोई जो पूछेगा। इस अहदे जवानी में जंजीरों में जकड़े हो, आबिद पे जफा होगी।
रिदा है रिदा रिदा है रिदा लुटी जो दश्त में थी ज़ैनब बेरिदा, किसी दिल की सदा कहाँ हो बावफा नहीं कोई पता, मेरी मदद को आ है तू इमाम है, बाजार है सजाद पत्थर मारते ये शमी बेहया, गई है बेरिदा तथीरे अंबिया, नबी की आल हूँ कोई तो दे रिदा है रिदा है रिदा।
जब शाम के जिंदा से ज़ैनब जो रिहा होगी, जब शाम के जिंदा रिहा होगी, जब शाम के जिंदा से अकबर सा नगीना भी मट्टी में जड़ा होगा, उलझा हुआ तीरों में शबीर वहाँ होगा। ज़ैनब तेरे कानों में मासूम सकीना के रोने की सदा होगी, जब शाम के जिंदा से ज़ैनब जो रिहा होगी, जब शाम के जिंदा से ज़ैनब जो रिहा होगी, जब शाम के जिंदा से ज़ैनब जो रिहा होगी। ख़ैमे में खड़ी ज़ैनब मक़तल में पड़ा भाई, गुर्बत की हकीकत में एक मौत की तन्हाई, उजड़े हुए ख़ैमे में ज़ैनब ने गुजारी जो वो रात भी क्या होगी।
रिदा है रिदा रिदा है रिदा कहा बीबी ने था हुसैन अलविदा, अब्बास अलविदा है अकबर अलविदा, है कासिम अलविदा है असगर अलविदा, है ओन अलविदा मोहम्मद अलविदा, सकीना अलविदा अलविदा अलविदा।
जब शाम के जिंदा से ज़ैनब जो रिहा होगी, जब शाम के जिंदा। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद।
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين. السلام على 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل